Welcome back to another episode of Peep Ballers. I'm your host Albert. Today joined by Chang-ho, a regular contributor to our community. Guys, big news. Thomas Tuchel. Yes, Tommy Tukes has been hired as the new manager for the English national team as they prepare for the 2026 World Cup. For those who don't know, Chang-ho is actually the only British Korean lad in our community. So he has a lot of insight on just how the folks back home in the UK are feeling about this. Chang-ho, I'll let you go first, man. When you saw the news drop, what was your initial reaction to this hire?
Well, I think the initial reaction when the reports started coming out that he could be appointed, and I think this was many people's initial reaction, it was, huh? Really? I wasn't, it wasn't what we were expecting. I didn't believe it at first. I thought this is maybe just some sort of negotiation ploy from Tuchel's side or just something that they were exploring, but then it got confirmed. And then I was like, huh. Okay, so when Southgate left the job, the initial feeling was that we would look for another English manager, that there would be continuity, that it was about building. But then this appointment wasn't what we expected on that front, on those fronts. So I think people feel very mixed about all this. Opinion will be very divided, I think, and it's already divided. I think on one hand, people will say he's an elite manager, a tactician, a proven winner as well with the Champions League. But then on the other hand, people will say he flopped at Bayern, that Chelsea never looked that good under him, even though they won the Champions League, and of course, that he's German, God forbid. We'll get to that in just a bit. But yeah, it's a strange appointment. I think many of us feel we're still trying to wrap our heads around it. I think, and I guess we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, that's my initial reaction for now.
Yeah, so before we get to the part of him being German and causing a scandal, for those who don't know, obviously Southgate leaves the job after many years in charge. The FA puts Lee Carsley as the interim. Now, Carsley has had some success, I believe, with the U20, U21 team in England, right?
Hmm.
And first few matches he was in charge, he did okay. And then there was that stinker against Greece, which I actually watched. He attempted to use a lineup with no strikers. He admitted later on in the press conference that they had tried this formation for 20 minutes in training. And then at that point, the FA is like, okay, we can't hire this guy. We wanted to probably give him the job because he's English and he's cheap, but it's not going to fly, especially after a loss to a Greek team that has been in the dumps for a while. So we hear these reports that Tuchel is going to get the job where he's in pole position. And we were confused because, obviously Manchester United had approached him earlier. And we're wondering, like Chango said, is this a negotiation ploy by Tuchel's camp to maybe get more leverage on United? But then we find out that he's actually signed the contract and he's going to start in 2025. Basically get paid 5 million euros a year. Bayern Munich will pay the rest of half of that salary. So he'll still get paid 10 million, which is a lot. But we'll jump into the tactics, but yeah, like Chango said, let's just get into the media tabloid reaction, because I saw publications like the Daily Mail, Chango, that said right away, they put the words German in bold, like it was some crazy scandal that, excuse me, a German man could be managing the English national team. Obviously, there's a little history there with the two world wars and whatnot. Chango is someone, who grew up in the UK and has been part of the British media. What did you think of that kind of reaction? Not from all the British public, but from some sectors of the UK.
You could see it coming a mile away. The headlines were immediately going to be there, and they were already there. As you said, the Daily Mail putting in bold the word German. And not just that, the headline was "A Dark Day for England." I mean, talk about overreaction and hyperbole. Yes, he's foreign, and that was always going to be an issue as well, whoever was foreign. The fact that he's German is just asking for trouble. It just immediately puts a target on his back. There's historical issues as well, all the issues with Brexit in recent years. There's we have a suspicion of Europeans in the UK at the moment, and so it's unfortunate. It shouldn't matter, but you knew it was going to happen. But I think, so this is my opinion, I don't think the issue is that he's German. That makes it almost worse. But I don't think it's the fact that he's German. I think it's the fact that he's not very likable to the British. I think that's what the issue is. So, for example, my example I give is if, for example, Jurgen Klopp had been appointed as England manager, I don't think there would have been this sort of reaction. Of course, people would have questioned, oh, is it right to hire a foreign manager? Is it right to hire a German? But I think the initial reaction would have been, actually, this is amazing. Like, people would be on board. I don't think you'd get that kind of Daily Mail headline, not at all. But Tuchel, he's just had a way of not really warming to the public here, not really warming to the media and the press, and that's actually really important for when you're taking a job in England for the Premier League or for the England manager's role. The pressure from the media is going to be huge. So yeah, if Klopp had been appointed or if Guardiola had been appointed, I don't think anyone would have had this kind of reaction. But the fact that it was Tuchel, it's a personality problem for me rather than a German problem, if you know what I mean.
It's actually a really great point. I didn't think of that because Klopp obviously is a legend for people down in Liverpool. Pep obviously considered the greatest manager of all time. And then yeah, you think about Tuchel and he's well regarded, I think, by most, British pundits in football, but he's never had the same warm likability, right? I mean, we look at his track record, PSG, Dortmund, Bayern, Chelsea. He's never lasted 3 full seasons at a club in terms of the big clubs he's managed. And there's a reason for that. As a Bayern fan, I watched his tenure very carefully because we fired Julian Nagelsmann for him. To be honest, he's a terrible man manager. He has a very prickly personality. He's very demanding of his players. He's a genius, and he analyzes and prepares well. He's a professional, but that doesn't mean he necessarily knows how to interact with his players, let alone the press. And I think part of the reason, that the British media were in an uproar is because, Gareth Southgate, for all his faults, I think he's a very poor manager tactically, very good at interacting with the media, really likable guy, someone the players can get behind. But maybe this, for the positive side of this, maybe a personality like Tuchel, more of a taskmaster who's going to come in and kind of mark his own territory with some of these English players, is needed because, you had a friend in Southgate, but now you need someone to take you to the next level, and maybe you need someone who pushes you and challenges you. And I guess I do wonder, considering the personalities in this English team, from what I've heard from people who excuse me, that work for Adidas and have been around actually the Bundesliga. Jude Bellingham, actually, from what I've heard, doesn't have the best reputation in the locker rooms that he plays in. He does give off a very nice, warm vibe in interviews and like on social media. But from what I've heard, guys like him can be very difficult to deal with. So I wonder, Chang-ho, in terms of this current English generation, which I think is the most talented in all of Europe, in my opinion, do you think even if he's only there for a year or two that he can manage to handle these young English guns? Because you got a lot of like interesting personalities in that locker room.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, Bellingham being difficult, for me, it's because he's a winner, he's a star, he's young. I think that rubs the people up the wrong way a little bit. It's a little bit like the situation with Lee Gang-in at the Korean national team as well, I think. People feel that he's maybe a bit too big for his boots, but for me, that's what comes with being a superstar. It's like having Ronaldo in your dressing room. Yes, Ronaldo is a bit of a diva and he wants all the attention and he's going to get all the attention, but you still want him on your team. You still got to get the best out of him because he's a world star. And Bellingham, so far in his career, he is starting to prove that he has that potential. So you have to deal with that. I think any manager has to deal with that. Whether Tuchel will be able to deal with that, I mean, perhaps Southgate was a bit too soft and a bit too weak when it comes to tactics. And so Tuchel is the other side, the flip side of that, is the complete opposite. But I do feel that it is quite a gamble by the FA still. And perhaps that is why it's only an 18-month contract until the end of the World Cup. This feels like a short-term solution, an easy fit. It doesn't feel like this is part of a long-term plan. It's a sort of a marriage of convenience for now. Right now, there were no other real English contenders. Tuchel was free, perhaps waiting for a more elite job as well, and just the timing aligned. But because of that as well, if it feels like he's a temporary manager will people react? Maybe they will, knowing that there's a World Cup. For players like Harry Kane, they might feel that this is the last chance for him and for some of him from in his generation. But it is a risk. We don't know how the players will react for now. That is something that we just have to watch. My concern is if they don't react well, it's going to turn sour quickly. And the England camp is notorious for having leaks and things like that. And if things don't go well, we'll find out about it pretty soon. It's a weird contract. So he starts in January 1st. So he won't be taking charge of the team until next year. So all this situation will be hanging in the air for the next 3 months. So we just have to wait. I mean, it's going to be frustrating actually, just to wait and see. But yeah, we just got to wait and see, I think.
Yeah, so I guess shifting away from the personality clashes that may occur, looking at the personnel, I think honestly it could be a little more positive if we take out some of the personality issues that could occur. From Tuchel's tenure at Dortmund and at PSG, he likes to use two number 10s and plays with back three with the wing backs pushing up, providing width. And I think for this England team where you have guys who like playing in the middle, Cole Palmer, Jude Bellingham, Phil Foden, all three of those guys are much more comfortable playing in the middle than they are out wide. And Tuchel relies a lot on those two number 10s in his system to create offense. So I think for the personnel that they have, he could work, because at this point, I think any manager that takes this job has to find a way to integrate all three of these guys, Palmer, Bellingham, and Foden, into the lineup. Maybe less so Foden, but to do that, I think Tommy Tuchel is probably the best answer for that, because he has experience, adapting his tactics to his players. When he took over at PSG, I think he initially had Neymar playing as just a 10 or a left winger. And then the next season when Neymar came back, he kind of adjusted his tactics and gave Neymar more of a free role along with Angel Di Maria. So I think this could work in terms of the personnel. I do wonder if he does switch to a back three for England. I think Harry Maguire's time as the starter is probably over. Maybe he'll be a bench player or a substitute. I think Tuchel will use John Stones a lot just because he's so versatile and can step up as a defensive midfielder as well. I kind of see Tuchel using maybe a back three with Colwill and Stones in the middle, maybe Gahey if he comes back into former Konza. I mean, what would you want to see, Jang-ho? How would you want to see him utilize the current talent on this English team? Because I definitely think Southgate underutilized a lot of these guys.
Well, I mean, my question to you is, I think you know him better than I do. Do you think he is flexible enough to try and incorporate all these different players? Because for me, the national team, especially for a country like England where there are loads of elite players, it's about getting a collection of sort of ill-fitting parts and making it work. It's not about perhaps implementing a system. You have to try and fit in the best talent and somehow make it work. Because if you don't, people are like, why isn't he playing? Why wasn't he picked? And it leaves a lot of questions. Southgate faced a lot of those sort of questions as well. Do you think Tuchel is versatile enough to adapt?
I think the Bayern Tuchel, if we get the Tuchel we saw at Bayern for the last 2 years, then no. If we get the Tuchel from PSG pre-COVID, when that team was running through Ligue 1 and scoring 3-4 goals per match for fun, we have to remember he won the French league in both the seasons there, which actually isn't easy to do, actually, considering there are some pesky teams in that league. Then this could work. If it's the Tuchel from PSG Dortmund, I think it could work. But if it's the Tuchel we saw recently at Bayern, where I thought he played a lot of the right players. My bigger issue with him was just the lack of offensive creativity that Bayern showed, where it seemed like, the popular horseshoe where the players were just passing sideways the entire time and there was no sense of vertical attack. That will be incredibly toxic for this English team, especially considering the last manager they had in Southgate. And also even at Chelsea, the one red flag I do remember right before he got fired was I remember watching the Chelsea games. I just remember how dull they were. There was just no creativity. It's if the two 10s for Chelsea at the time, Mount and Havertz or Mount and Werner, weren't having good games, there was just no creativity for the Chelsea team because the only width that they were getting was from Reece James and Ben Chilwell on the sides. And, you can't always rely on your wingbacks to provide offense. So to me, it really depends on how he decides to approach this team and just kind of the instructions he gives them, if that makes sense. Because at Bayern, it was terrible to watch, man. Like Julian Nagelsmann, when he got fired, wasn't doing a good job either. But Thomas Tuchel took over and made that team objectively worse. I think instead of using a back three, if I was him, for England, I would use the 4-3-3 he used at Dortmund, where he had Julian Weigl as a number six who was comfortable on the ball and could pass. And then he kind of used two number 10s in Ilkay Gundogan and Shinji Kagawa in front of Weigl, and then he had three forwards in Aubameyang, Royce, and I believe it was Mkhitaryan on the other side. So I think if he just keeps it simple and goes with like a 4-3-3 instead of using a back three, this could work. But given, I think, some of the frailties in the English back line, he might revert to a back three, and I think that's when you might see some problems with England.
It's interesting because this job, it's all about the World Cup. The thing is, it's still a year and a half away. That's still quite a while away. And especially for a team like England, where there are, as I said, so many elite players, and it's about picking about who's perhaps best in form as well. Right now, Harry Kane is the undisputed striker, but he's starting to show his age a little. And I'm just wondering, in about a year and a half's time, will he still be at the level we need him to be? And then if it's not him, there are other players but around him, like Ollie Watkins or whatever in the team, but they also offer something very different. They offer younger pace, and so that's a very different style of play as well. We'll have to see. I think it's going to be tough for Tuchel. I don't think there's going to be any honeymoon period for him because of all these issues surrounding the fact that he's German, that he's not very likable. So, and also because he has this reputation for being a tactician, people will expect results very quickly, I think. And if we don't see what he's trying to do, if it doesn't work right away, there's going to be so much pressure right away. There's going to be a lot of questions asked. So all these tactics you're talking about, we'll see. I don't have any expectations as such for what I would like to see, because under Southgate, it was always just so dull and also predictable that I am willing to give anyone a chance. I'm willing to give Tuchel a chance to see if you can change things up and get the best out of them. In the best case scenario, Southgate has laid the foundation work for the right culture in England for the last however many years. Now, Tuchel is brought in to finish the job, essentially, over the next year and a half, to bring in the tactics and the style of play. Hopefully, the culture is embedded enough and stable enough that the players get on board and give it a go as well. And I think these players in England nowadays, because they do work under managers who are so tactical, they will understand, they will give it a go, they will get on board. But as I said, if it doesn't work in the first few games, it could lead to a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and so for you, it's like you obviously want to win, but selfishly, I'm guessing you still want him to win in a style that's more enjoyable to watch, right? Because I'm sure you didn't enjoy what you saw under Southgate, or you don't care.
That's the dilemma, I think, English people had, because obviously we want to win, and when you get to the final, you're always in support of the team. But up till the final, you're like, I wish we were playing better. I don't know. I am very conflicted. On one hand, I don't think I'd care how we win, but then if once we win, I think afterwards we were like, okay, now we've won, let's play better football. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
But obviously, if we could win in a style that would play well, that would be good as well.
Fair
so,
enough.
Yeah.
No, it's all right. It's been a while since England have won, and they should win something. But I think one positive as we wrap up the video is the fact that Thomas Tuchel is actually a bit of an Anglophile. He has said in interviews in the past that he actually feels more appreciated in England. He loved coaching in the Premier League. I think he loves living in London more so than Germany. From what I remember when he coached Bayern, he wasn't too happy living in Munich. Like he he liked being the Bayern coach, but he wasn't in his comfort zone. You know, there's just some of these cosmopolitan guys who are very intelligent that just like living abroad and like living in London. Like, who wouldn't want to? Like, I want to live there, right? But I think that could work because, yes, he's a foreigner, guys, but this dude is going to take this job seriously. He loves England. He loves the Premier League, and he wants the national team to do well. And I think for a guy who's making $10 million at Bayern, for him to take that big of a pay cut means that he was really passionate about this job. And I guess as we wrap up, Chango, the last thing I'll ask you is, what is your minimum expectation that Tuchel has to hit for this World Cup, for his tenure, to be considered a success?
Well, I do genuinely believe that he's doing it for the right reasons, as in, like, he does want to give it a good go. He likes England. He likes managing. The question will be, does he like the British press? The British press is going to be an issue, and do the British press like him? Because I think, you need a bit of support from the press to help the national team.
Yeah.
It's not a nice environment when the British press aren't on your side. It can get very toxic in England. So that is going to be a situation that he has to manage. For example, will he sing the national anthem or not? I wish he had just come out right from the start and kind of said, I will, or I won't, or just something. But he's kind of left it limbo. He's saying, "Oh, I'll see. I'll think about it." And it's like, again, that raises more questions. So I think that's things like that is what bugs me, and I think that is the first thing that he will need to figure out. The first thing I want from him is to be able to handle the British press more effectively, and kind of understand the British people's mentality on that side first. Performance-wise, we're going to see some good results right away, some good football right away, and then for the World Cup, considering everything that Southgate has done, we do expect, I think, at least a semi-final finish. It's going to be tough, of course, but I think our expectations have been raised so high now that I don't think anything less than that. He's always going to be measured up to Southgate. Even if he plays better football, he's going to be like, well, the football was prettier, but Southgate was more successful. And so for us, I think, semi-final, hopefully playing better football as well.
No, you got to reach the final for me. I'm adamant in the fact that I thought this English team should have won the 2020 Euros. Had the Italians dead to rights, and then Southgate decides to turtle after scoring that first goal. I'm not saying that England have to win it, because a lot of things have to fall your way to win a World Cup. There's lots of luck involved, injuries, depth, whatnot. But this generation of English players, maybe outside of the goalkeeping position and the center backs, it's ridiculous how many good players there are. I don't think there's a position where you look at it and go, oh, that's a real glaring weakness that a team can exploit. Like I said, the center backs, they're not the best, but or maybe you disagree with that?
Well, no, that's the thing. So I think we are very good, but the central defense, as you said, is an issue. I think our best strength is the strength in depth. It's our bench. I think that is the biggest advantage that we have over other countries. That I don't think we've got many truly world-class star players throughout the squad. But
you don't need that to win a World Cup.
Sure, but I think we have really elite players up to our reserves and substitutes as well. I think that is the biggest strength that England has.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the ridiculousness of like Anthony Gordon not getting minutes at the Euros because the team was so stacked, for sure. And as long as everyone stays healthy, England should definitely be one of the favorites. But yeah, I agree with Chango completely. Like, finals for me, but semifinals is the bare minimum. And like, the British press are going to get on him and compare him to Southgate, especially if a German manager isn't able to progress as far as Southgate did at the World Cup. So we will keep an eye on that. It's going to be interesting, guys, to see just the lead up to Thomas Tuchel's first game and just the hype that's going to surround it. But I am excited for this World Cup. You're going to have guys like Thomas Tuchel, Julian Nagelsmann, Maurizio Pochettino, Marcelo Bielsa on international teams. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll keep you guys updated. Definitely try to have Chango back on again as this develops. Yeah, guys, I'll don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I'm going to link Chango's personals to this video. Don't forget to tune into his show, Korea 24 on KBS World Radio. He does a lot of good work there. Chango, anything else before we wrap up?
It's going to be a long wait to this first match. I don't know how many. I don't know when the first international games will be for England post January. But yeah, it's going to be a long few months, I think.
So the first match, I think, is probably going to be after this Nation League's end. It looks like you're going to play the 2026 World Cup qualifiers because those groups have not been drawn yet. So I believe that Carsley will take over for the last two Nations League games against Greece in Athens, against Ireland in London. And then after that, you start World Cup qualification with Tuchel, so right into the Lions' Den. Yeah.
Imagine if Lee Carsley does amazing the last two games. Like the team is like incredible. We're gonna have buyer's remorse
again, and
although I doubt
that's what comes.
We'll see.
The pressure cooker of managing the English team is that you're always going to be compared to the guy before you, right? So it's going to be exciting. We'll see what happens, but until then, we'll see you guys in the next video.